This is the fourth branding that we're doing for this campaign, which is for Abu Dhabi media, for different channels. This is specifically for the sports one. And what we're doing, it's growing in the right way, so, and it's becoming bigger than the actual idea.
Difficult is not the right word. It's work to do, so we have to put together the element that can be good enough for the film, starting with the director. So we had to look for somebody who was really creative and different from the others, who wanted to do something different with the stuff we had. And then we found Anders, and he was really very interested about doing these things, play around with the boards and do amazing stuff.
I really like still photography, so I thought, why don't we approach it that way? Why don't we approach this as still photography, but live action? And there's a certain aesthetic about it, that sort of HDR look. So I thought, how the hell do we do that? Obviously, when you do still photography, you expose for your subject, you make your athlete look amazing. Then you make sure that your background, you shoot the background, and then there's lots of retouching, lots of little polishing everywhere. And you know, that if we wanted to do that and have moving cameras and stuff, there's no way in hell that we would be able to do that. So I thought, okay, let's shoot with this with a stereo rig, with a beam splitter and then two cameras, one on top and one on the bottom. Obviously, that's a crazy setup it's not very nimble to move around with two cameras and lots of alignment of the cameras and stuff. So, well, could we do this in an easier way that would also give us something extra? So I thought, why don't we bring in a techno-dolly, which is essentially a motion control rig that's very easy to work with. It's just as any other crane, but it records the moves. So that means that we can expose for our athlete, and then we can let the robot repeat the background and expose for the background. But what it can also do is that it can shoot the background slowly. That means we get slow motion foreground and time-lapse background. And since we're shooting this on Phantom, it requires a lot of light. That means that we would have tons of light lighting the athlete, and then kill all the light, move it all out, and then expose for the background. And then on top of that, we just thought, okay, since we're going for this super stylized look, let's just go all aggressive on the angles, so everything is shot like crazy wide angles.
So we thought about how we could complement and embellish the hyper-realism and ultra-clarity of the footage. So we figured that particles emanating from the limbs of the athletes would help to accentuate and emphasize the motion. The first job was to add nulls to all of the limbs that would move significantly. We then modeled a proxy mesh to simulate smoke. Because we have this geometry, we can use it as a collision object, making the smoke actually follow the bodies, so it's not just coming out of them. We then use that smoke to simulate particles on top of it. We do this in 3 passes. So we have the smoke, and then we have finer particles, and then bigger particles. And then when we render that out, we get first the smoke here, then the minor particles here, and the major particles here. And that in motion looks like this, which when composited on top of the footage looks like this.
So my job was to animate the floor for this sprint shot. So I had to make the floor transform from street into a running track. So we had to think about some of the elements that we wanted to portray. So speed, power, and grace were the 3 main things we thought about. So I'm going to show you some of the process animations that we went through before we got to our final decision. So this was the first one. I went for a lot of complexity, but as you can see, it's not very clear what's going on. So then we moved on to this one. Maybe not very speedy, not very powerful. This one is cool, but maybe it's very messy. There's too much going on there. And then the final one we came up with here more of a wave. It has more speed and power to it. And here's our final result.
So obviously it's a super technical shoot. We've had a great client who is all up for this. We made sure we understood what we wanted early, all of us, and then we just went out and just did it.
For each shot, we shot different passes. We shot a high-speed exposure of the background. We shot the grass or the ground to be on. And, of course, our talents, our fighters doing the fighting. So first task for us was to prepare the background. And on this shot, we had some small issues with the neon lights. So we had to repair those. Then we combined this background with the grass plate. And it starts to look like this. Then we have our fighters. We received the CG from the animation guys. Then we prepared so they had the same look as the background. Then we extracted the shadows from the players, the ground shadows. And then the shot is ready for look development.
So the challenge was to create this high contrast HDR look from footage that was basically well exposed and well shot, but not shot in HDR. To create this look, we needed to look at different photographers that actually work with this HDR photography, where they actually shoot several passes, up to 50 passes to create a still, which is fairly complex to do in live action. We needed to create a process to make this look like it was shot in HDR. This is why we actually shot it in several passes, because we needed a background that was 100% exposed and we needed the foreground 100% exposed. And then put these two layers together with the CG, we end up with a shot that was 100% sharp and no rag defocus or anything in the shot. From here we do some basic color correction before we go to the HDR process. So when we run the footage through this, we get this very high contrast bleached look with lots of depth. After that we need to make it very crisp, and that's just basic intelligent sharpen filters we actually use. From start to end we have a well exposed shot and end up with this very high contrast HDR look.
We're given the freedom to do whatever we want as creatives, and we've been lucky to have clients that trust us, and we give the freedom to the directors that we work with, because we choose them for their skills. So if you are going to choose a director and then dictate exactly what you need to do, then you might as well do it yourself.
Putting together the right team is the most important thing. This one, it's going to be amazing. Nobody has seen it before.
Thank you so much for making this film. We really appreciate it. And thanks for this guy for letting me jam as much as you wanted. Awesome. Thank you.